Last year, we couldn't go 5 seconds of television without getting one of these thrown in our face. Last year, we couldn't watch 5 minutes of League Pass without getting one of these thrown in our face. They couldn't go to commercial break without throwing one of these in our face.
The WNBA is dealing with an unexpected storm. League management relied on big media outlets and business partners for years to elevate women's basketball. Amazon was the flashy new partner that brought streaming credibility, while Disney, through ESPN and ABC, was meant to be the steady hand. However, the murmurs have now grown into loud warning signs. It has been reported that Disney and Amazon are reconsidering their pledges, threatening to reduce or possibly withdraw their future TV rights. The league runs the risk of losing the funding and recognition that have kept it afloat without...
No Caitlin Clark! These companies wipe their hands of the WNBA. They're not going to put time, they're not going to put effort, they're not going to put money.
The silence is being noticed by fans who used to see WNBA highlights, features, and advertising everywhere. The league's viability without significant corporate support is now the question, not whether Caitlin Clark can salvage it. Furthermore, the response can be harsher than any WNBA official wants to acknowledge.
Other than a Nike commercial, other than a Gatorade commercial, how many commercials have you seen of companies putting WNBA players as the face of their commercial? I can't think of one.
One of the first topics that comes up when discussing the long-term viability of professional sports is broadcast rights. In the current environment, television revenue is the foundation rather than merely a perk. Because the networks know that viewers will watch, billions of dollars come in for leagues like the NFL, NBA, and even Major League Baseball. Not only do players get paid with that money, it ensures that fans cannot avoid viewing it, generates sponsorships, and keeps the league relevant. On the other hand, the WNBA has always been unique. To get games in front of casual viewers, the league has long relied on alliances with businesses like Disney via ESPN and ABC. The hope was straightforward. Perhaps it would garner enough attention for the WNBA to make a splash.
That CarMax commercial, they ran that all Caitlin Clark's senior year at Iowa. They ran that all through the draft. They ran that all through last year. They ran that all through this year's draft. But we haven't seen it since Caitlin Clark has been down.
In comparison to the WNBA's previous performance, the figures were not just better, but historic. All of a sudden, viewers who had never given the league any thought were paying attention. The cost of tickets increased. Sales of jerseys skyrocketed, and broadcasts were even surpassing those of other well-known sports. The WNBA appeared to have finally turned the corner. The issue was that the spike wasn't based on widespread interest from all teams and celebrities. When Clark suffered a season-ending injury, it was nearly completely her fault. The number of viewers dropped nearly instantly. Once million viewing games now only have a few 100,000 watchers. ESPN scarcely paid attention to other matchups, as they used to spend entire segments on First Take and Sports Center promoting her highlights.
WNBA players are back to being ignored by corporations and companies. They're back to being in obscurity. With Caitlin Clark, rising tide lifts all boats, and she was the tide that lifted them all.
When the interest waned, businesses took note. Disney is not in the business of endorsing sports with unreliable viewership. They saw the WNBA as a long-term investment that would satisfy marketers while demonstrating their commitment to diversity. However, advertisers pay for eyes, not for sentimental tales. The hype died down as soon as Clark left the roster, and the million-dollar marketing slots connected to WNBA broadcasts suddenly lost a significant portion of their value.
Ticket sales. From $89 per ticket prior to Caitlin Clark's season-ending injury, down 30% to $62 a seat.
At that point, the first rumors that Disney might not fully renew its contract started to spread. Amazon, meanwhile, became active in women's basketball due to the overwhelming demand for live content on streaming services. It's among the few things that people continue to watch live. However, Amazon is also numerate. They will stop investing if their streams don't produce results.
Let's talk about some of these ratings real quick. Fever Mercury from last Tuesday, 310,000. Fever Mystics from last Sunday, 270,000. The Fever Mystics on NBA TV got outdrew by women's college volleyball on the Big Ten Network. Oh boy. Wing Sparks, the game right after, 130,000. And the finale between the Sky and the Aces did 90,000 views.
According to reports, its officials are already examining whether the WNBA generates enough revenue to cover the costs. The WNBA will lose its livelihood in addition to its prominence if Disney and Amazon sever their ties. And the unraveling is just getting started. Because the future involves more than simply contracts, it also involves sponsors, ads, and the league's general significance. When there is no TV support, everything else starts to...
And that goes into why they held off so long in announcing Caitlin Clark's season-ending injury, because they knew people would stop showing up. They knew the excitement and the interest would wind down.
Advertising is one of the most obvious indicators of how precarious the WNBA's position is. There is more to commercials than just fluff in between games. They serve as evidence that large companies value a product enough to invest millions to place their name alongside it. You couldn't turn on League Pass or ESPN last season without seeing back-to-back advertisements with WNBA players. There were Wilsons everywhere in CarMax locations. Sue Bird appeared consistently in all other promos, and Sabrina Ionescu appeared in State Farm skits. Cars and insurance weren't the only products being sold in those ads. They aimed to link well-known businesses to the notion that the WNBA was growing. However, the illusion has rapidly diminished. Many of those identical ads have just stopped airing because of Caitlin Clark's absence and declining ratings. CarMax hasn't promoted any new ads with WNBA players in them. Once plastering Liberty stars throughout prime time, State Farm has hardly mentioned the league in its national advertisements. Fans who formerly made jokes about being able to memorize those advertisements are now unable to recall the last time they have ever seen one. That isn't a coincidence. Businesses follow the current trend. Additionally, the WNBA does not yet offer it. The commercial for the Paige Bucher is a prime illustration. It is restricted to League Pass feeds that are only accessible by the elite, rather than being shown on ABC during major athletic events. Women's basketball is already watched by a small niche audience. That isn't visible across the country. Containment is that. Despite the league's rhetoric about expansion, sponsors aren't actually making investments outside of Clark's cocoon. Additionally, the money stops coming in when Clark isn't playing. Disney and Amazon's hesitancy makes even more sense in light of this. For what reason would networks continue to give away great real estate if advertisers are already pulling back? It is not only unprofitable but also a surefire loss to broadcast WNBA games without advertisements to offset the expense. Ad income is the lifeblood of networks such as ESPN. Executives don't perceive diversity or advancements in social justice when advertisements stop airing. Endeavors. They see dollars that are empty. That's why it's so concerning that the State Farm and CarMax ads have vanished. It demonstrates that the excitement was caused by short-term corporate virtue signaling riding or Clark's coattails, rather than by natural league-wide support. The message this conveys to casual followers is much more harmful. The WNBA seemed to finally become popular last year due to the league's ubiquitous ads. You were unable to avoid it. The stillness this year conveys a different message. Out of mind, out of sight. Casual viewers forget if they don't receive consistent commercial reinforcement. Additionally, the numbers plummet when casualty forgets. The players in the WNBA may discuss advancements. However, behind closed doors, businesses are reducing their losses. The two largest companies exerting pressure on the league are Disney and Amazon. The networks won't be far behind if the advertisers vanish. Additionally, the WNBA won't simply lose its ads if the networks vanish. It might completely lose the stage. At that point, the panic truly begins to manifest. Sponsors' departure is just the first domino effect. The subsequent one is the ruthless rating fall in which Clark is left to bear the burden. Ratings on television don't lie. They are the most reliable indicator of sports truth and the metric used by networks and advertisers to determine whether a product is worthwhile. Caitlin Clark's debut season was expected to be the turning point for the WNBA. Additionally, in a brief period, ESPN's Indiana Fever games drew over 1 million people, occasionally surpassing Major League Baseball in viewership. Highlights trended, clips went viral, and the league at last achieved its long-awaited goal of a nationwide draw. However, the dream was short-lived. The numbers plummeted the instant Clark suffered a season-ending injury. Without her, Fever games fell into the 200,000 or 300,000 range. Women's collegiate volleyball, a sport with a much smaller budget and less advertising, attracted more viewers than some programs. Without her, even NBA TV games, which Clark increased to over 500,000 viewers last year, fell to half that number. The justification that it was merely a Sunday time slot or that the timing was off is insufficient. Increase since the Fever had already demonstrated their ability to play against primetime NFL games. This is the plain truth. Fans quit watching when Clark isn't around. This is a nightmarish situation for Disney. ESPN cannot defend giving games with fewer than 300,000 viewers prime time when other sports may treble or double that amount over the same time frame. Without Clark, every hour spent on WNBA broadcasts results in a loss for advertisers, and networks detest financial losses. Executives are already debating whether it makes sense to extend the agreement because of this. Amazon has the same problem. Live sports are meant to be a treasure trove for streaming, one of the rare shows that viewers are compelled to watch in real time as opposed to later skipping or binging. However, the WNBA doesn't consistently produce high figures. Caitlin Clark figures are delivered, and everything else is a sharp decline. Because of this discrepancy, Amazon is unable to create a dependable streaming package around the league. With only one player able to guarantee an audience, why pay premium cash for rights? The league's shaky base is revealed by these ratings, which is the real problem. WNBA executives maintained for years that visibility was the issue, that people would fall in love with the product if they only had the opportunity to see it. They were given that opportunity by Clark's ascent. Even though her supporters flocked to her, they left for the others.